Clint didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He simply stood up. It was 1982, in a studio executive office in Burbank. Warner Brothers. Third floor. Corner office with windows overlooking the lot where they built the western town sets 30 years earlier. The director sat behind the desk. Expensive suit. Confident smile. Hands spread wide like he was blessing the room. "Clint," he said, leaning back in his leather chair, "you need to understand something. I make stars. I made you. Without me, you're just another actor who got lucky in some Sergio Leone films." Clint sat across from him. Silent. Watching. His hands rested on the arms of the chair, still, relaxed. His face showed nothing. Just that squint. That look people mistook for meanness but was really just attention. The director kept talking. He was good at that. "This picture needs my vision. My style. You do what I need you to do, we'll have another hit. You start thinking you know better than me, we've got a problem. Are we clear?" Clint stood up. Not fast. Not angry. Just stood up. He buttoned his jacket. One button. Slow. Then he walked to the door. "Where are you going?" The director's voice had an edge now. "We're not done here." Clint's hand touched the doorknob. He paused. Turned his head slightly, not all the way, just enough to show profile. "Yes, we are," he said. 2 words. He opened the door and walked out. Clint didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The project was called The Blood Meridian Directive, a western that Warner Brothers had spent 2 years developing. Big budget. Summer release planned. The studio wanted Clint Eastwood because westerns with Clint Eastwood made money. Simple math. The director they'd hired was Victor Brennan. 48 years old. 3 successful action pictures in the last 5 years. He'd worked with big stars, made them look good, made studios money. He had a reputation, demanding, controlling, got results. What he also had was an ego the size of the San Fernando Valley. The meeting had been scheduled as a creative alignment session. Studio executives thought if they got Clint and Victor in a room together, they could smooth out the rough edges, get everyone on the same page. They were wrong. Victor had opened the meeting by laying out his vision. Lots of words. Lots of hand gestures. Lots of "I want," and "I need," and "my vision requires." Clint had listened. Hadn't said much. Just listened. Then Victor made his mistake. "Look, Clint, I respect what you've done. The Dollars trilogy, Dirty Harry, good work. But those were different times. Different style. This picture needs something modern. Something bold. And that comes from me. I'm the one who makes stars. I made Michael Bradford. I made Jennifer Cole. Without the right director, actors are just people standing in front of cameras." That's when Clint stood up. That's when he walked out. The studio executives sat in stunned silence after the door closed. Victor looked at them, spread his hands. "What? What did I say?" Nobody answered. Because they all knew. You don't tell Clint Eastwood you made him. Nobody made Clint Eastwood. To understand what happened next, you need to understand who Clint Eastwood was in 1982. He'd been acting for 26 years. Started in 1956 with bit parts, worked his way to Rawhide, then got the call from Sergio Leone that changed everything. 3 westerns in Italy that redefined the genre. Came back to America and became Dirty Harry, the cop that defined a generation's view of justice and moral complexity. By 1982, he directed 6 films himself. Play Misty for Me, High Plains Drifter, The Outlaw Josie Wales, The Gauntlet, Bronco Billy, Firefox. Some hits, some misses, all stamped with his particular style. Lean, efficient, no wasted shots, actors treated like professionals. He didn't yell at crew. Didn't throw tantrums. Didn't make people work 18-hour days to serve his ego. He showed up on time. Knew everyone's name. Said please and thank you. To the Teamsters and grips and craft services people who nobody else acknowledged. And he didn't work with people who thought they were God. The studio tried to salvage the situation. They called Clint's agent. They sent flowers. They offered more money. They suggested maybe Victor had been misunderstood, and could they please schedule another meeting? Clint's response came through his agent, simple and final. Find another actor. Warner Brothers panicked. They had $100 million Western budgeted for their summer tentpole, and they just lost their star because their director couldn't keep his mouth shut. They called Victor Brennan in for a meeting. Fix this, the studio head said. Victor laughed. Actually laughed. He walked out on me. If anyone needs to apologize, it's him. I'm the director. I'm the vision. He's just the guy in front of the camera. The studio head, an older man named Bernard Stein who'd been in the business since the 1950s, leaned back in his chair. He'd worked with John Ford, Howard Hawks, William Wyler. He'd seen 100 directors come and go. Victor, Bernard said quietly, do you know how many directors have worked with Clint Eastwood and then asked to work with him again? I don't care about all of them, Bernard interrupted. Every single director who's worked with Clint wants to work with him again. You know why? Victor didn't answer. Because he's a professional. He shows up prepared. He doesn't waste time. He doesn't waste money. He treats everyone on set, from the lead actor to the guy who sweeps the floor, with the same respect. And he makes movies that make money. I make movies that make money too. Yes, you do, Bernard agreed. But Clint makes movies that people remember. There's a difference. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. Victor Brennan didn't apologize. His ego wouldn't allow it. Instead, he told the studio he'd be happy to work with any professional actor they wanted to hire. The studio hired Tom Selleck. Good actor. Professional. The movie got made. It bombed. Badly. Critics called it overwrought, self-indulgent, a director's ego masquerading as a Western. It made back about 40% of its budget. Victor Brennan's career took a hit he never fully recovered from. Meanwhile, Clint Eastwood was making a different decision. He'd been reading scripts, looking for his next project. He found one he liked. A smaller Western, more character-driven, about an aging gunfighter trying to leave his violent past behind. The studio offering it didn't have much money. It was a gamble. Clint decided to direct it himself. The film was called Pale Rider. He assembled a small crew. People he'd worked with before. People who understood his style. Show up on time, know your job, don't waste film, trust the actors. On the first day of shooting, Clint gathered everyone together. Cast, crew, producers. About 60 people standing in the morning cold on a mountain location in Idaho. We've got 42 days to make this picture, Clint said. His voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard him. The studio's nervous because the budget's tight and Westerns aren't supposed to work anymore. So here's how we're going to prove them wrong. He paused. Looked around at the faces watching him. We're going to show up on time. We're going to do our jobs. We're going to treat each other like professionals. And we're going to make something good. That was it. No big speech. No inspirational sermon. Just the plan. They shot Pale Rider in 41 days. Came in under budget. Nobody quit. Nobody complained. The film opened in summer 1985, 3 years after Clint walked out of that office. It made over $50 million. Critics called it a return to classic Western storytelling, Eastwood's most assured work as a director yet. Victor Brennan's film from 1982 was already forgotten. Nobody remembered the director who thought he made stars. But everyone remembered the actor who walked out rather than compromise his principles. Away from the cameras, Clint made a choice no one expected. Years later, a young director named James Mangold was preparing to work with Clint on a film. He was nervous, Clint's reputation preceded him. The professionalism. The efficiency. The quiet authority. Before the first day of shooting, James asked one of Clint's longtime crew members for advice. "What's the secret to working with him?" The crew member smiled. "Don't waste his time. Don't waste anyone's time. Show up knowing your job. Treat people with respect. That's it. That's it. That's it." Clint doesn't need speeches. He doesn't need motivation. He just needs everyone to do their job. And he leads by example. On set, James watched Clint work. Watched him arrive before call time. Watched him know every crew member's name. Watched him do a scene in 2 takes because he'd prepared, the actors had prepared, and there was no reason to waste film. During lunch, an elderly teamster, a man who'd been driving trucks on Hollywood sets since the 1960s, approached Clint. "Mr. Eastwood, I just wanted to say, I drove on the Blood Meridian directive back in '82. The one that fell apart. I heard what happened in that office. I heard what that director said to you." Clint looked up from his lunch. Said nothing. Just listened. "I'm glad you walked out," the teamster said. "Guys like him think the crew is invisible. Think we're just furniture. You never treated us that way." "Never." Clint nodded once. "You do good work. Respect goes both ways." The teamster walked away smiling. James Mangold stood nearby, having witnessed the exchange. "Did that really happen? The thing with Victor Brennan?" Clint took a bite of his sandwich. Chewed. Swallowed. "Long time ago. What made you walk out?" Clint was quiet for a moment. Then, he forgot something important. "What?" "Movies aren't made by one person. Director's important. Actor's important. But so is everyone else. The guy who brings you coffee. The woman who does your makeup. The teamster who makes sure equipment gets where it needs to be. You treat those people like they don't matter, you don't understand what making movies is." He stood up, threw his trash away. "Victor thought he made stars. But stars are made by everyone working together. He never understood that. What followed stayed with everyone who witnessed it, forever. Pale Rider became one of the highest-grossing westerns of the 1980s. It revitalized the genre. It proved Clint Eastwood didn't need anyone to make him. He'd been making himself for 3 decades through professionalism, respect, and hard work. Victor Brennan directed 4 more films over the next 10 years. None were particularly successful. He developed a reputation for being difficult. Studios stopped calling. He gave an interview in 1995, one of his last before retiring, where a journalist asked him about his biggest regret. Victor was quiet for a long time. Then, there was a meeting. Long time ago. I said something stupid to someone who deserved better. I was young. Thought I knew everything. Thought the director was the only one who mattered. Who was it? Victor smiled sadly. Doesn't matter now. But I'll tell you this, I watched his career after that. Watched him direct. Watched how he treated people. And I realized he'd been trying to teach me something in that office. By walking out. By not arguing. By just leaving. What was the lesson? That you don't prove you're right by talking. You prove it by doing. By showing up. By respecting the work and the people doing it. The journalist asked if he'd ever apologized. I tried, Victor said. Sent a letter years later. Never heard back. Don't blame him. What Victor didn't know was that Clint had received the letter. Had read it. Had filed it away in a drawer and never mentioned it to anyone. Because for Clint, it wasn't about apologies or vindication. It was about the work. Share and subscribe, some stories deserve to be remembered. Clint Eastwood continued making films for another 40 years after that office in 1982. He directed over 30 films. Won Oscars. Mentored young filmmakers. Built a legacy not on ego or self-promotion, but on professionalism and respect. The lesson from that day in Burbank became Hollywood legend, told quietly among crews, passed from veteran to newcomer, a reminder that real authority doesn't announce itself. It just stands up and walks out. And 30 years later, in 2012, when Clint Eastwood received the American Film Institute Lifetime Achievement Award, dozens of actors and directors stood on stage to honor him. Not one of them talked about his talent. They all talked about his character. About showing up on time. Knowing names. Not wasting anyone's time. Treating the woman who brings coffee with the same respect as the studio executive. That night, an elderly man in the audience watched the ceremony. Victor Brennan. Retired. Forgotten by most. He sat in the back row and listened to people praise the man he'd once tried to diminish. When the ceremony ended, he didn't try to approach Clint. Didn't ask for a photograph or force a conversation. He simply stood, put on his coat, and walked out of the theater into the Los Angeles night. And if you'd asked him what he felt in that moment, he might have said, respect. For the man who taught him, through silence and a single walk to the door, that you don't make stars. You become one by doing the work and respecting everyone doing it with you.